For those of you that are new, I'll just kind of start with my welcome as I'm logging people in. For those of you too that are unaware, Global Hemp Association is a membership-based group. We host a number of meetings every month. The link that you use to log in today is a reoccurring link. We host this meeting on the first Tuesday of every month. Bruce and I are collaborating to really bring to light the discussion around the carbon sequestration and the impact that hemp has on the carbon footprint. And so please feel free to register, share. We'd love to have you join. If you or anybody that you think would be great up on a panel discussion or on a one-on-one interview, I would love to highlight what you're doing and talk about it. That's really my goal in building this platform, is to provide a place for you to connect, build relationships, and grow your business. With that being said, our membership is $75 a month. You can pay annually at $750 annually, but all of our members get transcribed notes, video recordings, additional invites to other meetings, discounts to large events. We're hoping to host an expo in October. So let's see, October or November, I think actually is the 2 dates of next year. And so that will also be included in your membership. And then in September, end of August, September, I'm going to be launching a software platform that will allow us to collaborate amongst other associations and groups, create small groups, discussions, ideation, really allow us to whiteboard and put people together. The coolest part about it is it allows us to build out this roadmap with data and contacts across the globe. So it will be searchable. You'll be able to see who's doing what within our network. So I invite you guys to get involved. There's tons of sponsor opportunities. It really is something that allows us to take collaboration to the next level within the industry. So I'm really excited about it.
So welcome everybody, and thank you again, Mandi, for creating this space for everybody to share ideas. And it's just, I love GHA. Do such a great job. My name is Bruce Dietzen. Some of you may know me as the guy who made the modern day hemp car and drove it around with Jay Leno on Jay Leno's Garage. You can find details about that at renewsportscars.com. And also, I am the founder of Carbon Negative Fiber, where we are endeavoring to make biocomposites that will compete with carbon-intensive materials like fiberglass, carbon fiber, and hopefully also steel and aluminum in the future. So those are some really big, important markets that are very carbon positive that need to become carbon negative in the future. Most recently, I am one of several founding members of drawdownhemp.org, which we'll get into a little bit later in this presentation. I'm going to try to get it done in relatively short time so we can take questions and leave plenty of time for Paul. Let's see if I can advance this here. Okay, but before we can quantify how much CO2 can be drawn down by hemp, and before we can accurately sell carbon credits out there, which everybody seems to be very interested in right now, we need to answer one big question. Where's the carbon? Not where's the beef, but where's the carbon? Let's get a handle on that. Here's a little bit of update from the presentation that I did last month for the carbon meeting at GHA, where we investigated how much carbon, how much hemp had in terms of potential to sequester carbon. And the formula kind of goes like this, and it's all centered around the idea of carbon dioxide equivalent of dried hemp stalk manufactured specifically into durable goods. So the first number is a simple statement of fact. Plants are, once they're dried, they are 45% carbon. You are something like 20% carbon if you were dried out and put into a pile of dust. But plants are 45. This is a well-known fact. And that carbon, by the way, was derived from the atmosphere through the process of photosynthesis. Now, in order to take a look at that, to determine how much CO2 was pulled out of the atmosphere via photosynthesis and then now resides inside the plant material, we need to multiply that number by 3.67, which is the difference between the atomic weight of CO2, which is 44, and the atomic weight of carbon, which is 12. Really exciting math. I'm not going to go into it. If you really want to look at it, you can go back and take a look at the video from a month ago on Mandi's site. Now, if a farmer determines that he wants to leave these roots in the soil and practice regenerative farming techniques like that, he can actually sequester 20% more CO2 because that root material is plant material, which is also 45% carbon, and it's beneath the soil, so it's sequestered back into the soil. The other factor that we need to take a look at is the amount of carbon benefit we're getting minus the scope 1 to scope 3 emissions, which this is kind of a guesstimate at this point because we don't really have enough going on in the industry yet. So it's a guesstimate that we're going to kind of lose about 30% of that benefit because you have to burn diesel in your tractors and your trucks to move it around and then to process it into durable goods. So I think that's probably close to being representative. I had it at 15 last month, but I bumped it up after some of the things I saw. And then finally, the last part of the equation is the yield of stalks per acre, which I hope is a conservative number. I've got like 6 or 7 sightings that show that what's been happening so far in growing for fibers specifically, and we're only measuring the stalk, by the way. We're not measuring again the seeds or the top of the plant or the leaves or what have you. It's just the stalk material because that's the material that's most likely to be sequestered, say, for 100 years in a hemp house or something like that. So it's just that, and so. Right now, from these sources that I've found, they're all under 4 tons per acre. And that could go up dramatically, and we're hoping that it does. You see some of these guys that are growing stuff that's 20 feet tall. That's a lot of biomass. So we're going to keep an eye on that number. But for right now, what I'm trying to do is just put a number out. There's some calculations out there that people in the industry can kind of use and refer to. And then as we have more experience, especially at the end of this year from growers, we can find out if that number actually increases. So again, we're trying to be conservative here, but if we multiply that all together, you're going to see on the next slide what that adds up to. Now, the CO2 that's sequestered into the soil, we're assuming that it's going to be less than a ton per acre. And we're just going to compare it to corn right now until we have more data, but it's expected to be a little higher than corn, at least because the taproot goes much deeper when it can with a hemp plant than it does with corn. But again, where you see these red asterisks, these are things that we're going to continue to look at and revisit all the time at Project Drawdown Hemp. So if we do these numbers, it's pretty interesting, to be able to look at the soil sequestration. Most of the folks that are out there trading credits right now with regards to agriculture are just looking at the soil, right? And so you've got a lot of croplands around the world, and if all of them did no-till practices and this sort of thing, there's an opportunity to sequester gigatons of CO2 in the atmosphere from growing everything that's being grown by just using regenerative things. But that's where hemp has the potential to shine. If it's grown specifically for materials that can be used to make durable goods that can last for decades or even more, hundreds of years, then the potential can be 10 times more. So those calculations that I showed you on the previous slide give us a total of 4.5 metric tons per acre of CO2, but only if it's turned into durable goods. Corn, right? You eat the corn off the corn cobs, and then oftentimes they burn the stalks, etc. There's no sequestration going on with a lot of the crops, not only corn, but most crops that are grown today. Hemp, it has the potential to do much, much better if it's grown specifically for its bast and its herd. So actually 10 times more. So that's what we're concluding at this point in terms of the study is hemp grown to make durable goods can sequester 10x more CO2 than most crops. So making everything possible from hemp is kind of the battle cry of this new organization that we've been putting together called Drawdown Hemp. And it's focused on hemp's unique potential to address the climate crisis. We are an open source, not-for-profit entity working with farmers, startups, universities, all hemp associations that want to become involved, and corporations to quantify how hemp sequesters and avoids greenhouse gases. Now, it was inspired by Project Drawdown, which hopefully some of you are familiar with. That was launched in 2014, back in the weird old days when hemp was considered a Schedule I drug that was dangerous as heroin. And so it was not included in the analysis of some of the top ways to help save the planet, simply because it wasn't legal to grow. That's all changed. But if we look back on how they did this, they took 83 different solutions that were proposed by 83 different teams. And they were all over the map, different types of things, from reforestation to teaching women about how many kids they should have and blah, blah, blah. To bamboo, etc. And they all followed kind of a systematic approach to quantify how much carbon could be sequestered by their solution, how much carbon could be avoided by their solution, and then also what the cost of implementation would be to society. So what Bill Gates calls the green premium. It may cost a little more to make things out of hemp in this scenario or that scenario, and so that's what we call the green premium, and we want to quantify that as well. So, like Project Drawdown, we're going to be measuring the sequestration and the avoidance opportunities that are associated with hemp, and then stack ranking them in terms of their effectiveness. But unlike Project Drawdown, we are totally hemp-centric. We have a solution bias, quite admittedly a solution bias. We are out there to give hemp its day in the sun, if you will. So if you're interested in getting involved with us, please reach out, check us out at drawdownhemp.org. If you want to join the team, and we're looking for all sorts of people that want to contribute, again, that you saw the list of the types of folks that we're wanting to interact with. It's going to be a little bit of work, but probably if some of you are doing certain things already along this line, it's probably just stuff that you probably have it on a spreadsheet anyway. So to join up, you simply go and register on XPRIZE as an individual, and then you search for Drawdown Hemp and request to be added. Other things that you might be interested in doing is getting a hold of the ebooks that inspire Drawdown Hemp. One of them is The Emperor Wears No Clothes, of course, the #1 best-selling book about the history of hemp in history. And the second one, of course, is the Drawdown book itself, both available on Amazon. And if you don't remember any of that stuff, just give me a shout on email, brucedietzen@yahoo.com. So with that, I am prepared to take any questions.
Okay, cool. Real quick, before we do or move on, James, are you available? I would love to make an intro. I know you guys are in and out.
Hello.
Oh, you are on. Perfect. Yes, I can. Hi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're not on mute anymore either. Hi, James.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very good. I'd love to introduce you and have you tell a little bit about who you are and kind of what you're working on and how did you get connected in this group? I'd love to hear about you a little bit.
Well, I started, it's kind of a long story, but started off a long time when I actually was learning about Bruce, quite a long time ago, about the car he was making and what he was doing with hemp, and I am actually building cars right now, and I'm working on my own cars, and I want to implement hemp and I want to learn about how hemp can be used in car bodies and just hemp technologies throughout cars, and not just bodies, but anything really. And I really want to learn about that, and that's kind of how I learned about the group here.
So to give you a real quick, because James can't condense himself too quick, he does have a giant bio. At the age of 11, he was the youngest person in the world to have a college credit course in hybrid design and maintenance. He was an Earth Ranger when he was 7. And bottom line to both of us is that we recognize we got to save the planet, and we got to save it soon. Hemp is an incredible, I don't know if you guys know this. Okay, and James has, as a journalist, has interviewed everyone from Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt and the presidents of Ford, Jaguar, BMW, Christian von Koenigsegg. He is at the upper echelons of the best in the world for the race car industry. And James recognized that transportation and making that green is his greatest contribution to reducing the carbon footprint. And meeting Bruce, that was pretty cool for you.
It was, yeah.
Bruce inspired James to, and Bruce is coming on later, right?
I'm right here, bud.
Oh, there he is. Sorry, there you go. So Bruce inspired James to take that extra step. We knew that Ford, way back 50 years ago, made a car body out of hemp. And Bruce, with Jay Leno, was pounding the surface of his of the car he built, and it showed what a great product hemp is in terms of its durability and in terms of the things that it can do. And James really liked that. So now he's got a number of cars. He is thick into the piston head community, which is the group of people that vote against electric vehicles. So you got to rage from within the machine. And as James is going to be building some muscle cars that have got hemp bodies, and we're really interested in learning what the hemp biofuel.
Yeah.
So, but watching Bruce and what Bruce had done with his car had been very inspirational in what James is going to do, which is to use hemp for the sports cars that he is building. Right now, he's building a GT40 replica, and he's not old enough to drive it yet. But private property, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Bruce, great to see you, Bruce. Thanks so much for what you've done to inspire my son. I really appreciate it a great deal.
Good to see you, Gerard and James. All right, man.
It's good to have you guys both on, and I'm excited to introduce you, James, and really utilize this as an opportunity to meet some of our network to advance what you're working on. And we've spoken a lot about how do we bridge this gap and how do we bring outside industry in, and who is going to help deliver that message. And I just feel like there is no such thing as accidents that you came to us, or that Bruce introduced you and I when he did. And I'm really excited to take advantage or to utilize the opportunity to really educate people that are unaware of the benefits of hemp to your following and to everybody.
Yeah, James has and to everybody that is here, James has an incredible following of redneck piston heads. And so these are, you can't preach to the choir. So any of you guys that have products that are of hemp, we would, James is obviously, he looks like his mother, thank God. And he's very good in front of the camera. And if there's things and products that you guys have that we can help promote, our mission right now is to try and save the planet and for his generation. So please, anyone contact us, anything we can do. James has fortunately, he has a great deal of sponsors that have helped him. And one of the sponsors that we're looking for is a clothing sponsor, so he can wear overalls made out of hemp. So that's, again, it's such an incredible product, and it's a blessing to be among all of you. It really, as a dad, thank you, all of you guys, for trying to save the planet. We really love you guys a lot. And thank you so much, Mandi, for putting us all together. It's amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for joining. So I was really excited to introduce him because it just gives an example of where our message is going and what we've been doing. And with that being said, we celebrated our 1 year this last week, and I'm really excited. So thank you to all of you for the success that we've had and for how much we're growing. 1 year doesn't seem like a lot, but it sure feels like a lot. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We've done just over 260 interviews. James is definitely going to be one of them. We'll definitely help promote and connect these dots. And so with that being said, if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to holler or raise your hand. There is an icon down at the bottom. But Bruce, do you want to go ahead and let Paul speak before we take questions, or do you have anything you want to add real quick?
Either way, I can answer a really quick question. I think we're, let me take 3 minutes. That'll give Paul half the session.
Yeah, please.
There's one here from Cole. What percentage of the car that was actually hemp? Henry Ford's was probably 10%. My calculation was Henry Ford's body was probably, or the amount of hemp in the body of his car was probably less than 7%. He used a bunch of other stuff too, other types of fibers. But the cars that I've made, the body material is actually about 60% hemp. So probably about 10 times more than Henry Ford used per car, because all the reinforcement is 100% hemp fiber. And then the epoxy, the bio epoxy, is the other 40%. So hopefully that answers that question. See anything else that's, I'm trying to scroll through here, but.
Yes, I've got a question for James. What's your social media? People are wondering how they find you.
Oh, you can, if you type in James Doyle longevity on Facebook, James Doyle longevity, you can see my Facebook page.
And the concept of longevity is to, James wants to build a car with no planned obsolescence. So that's longevity.
Good idea. That's a great idea.
And Jay Miller, I know Jay out of Canada, so I'll be sure to connect these guys. That's great. I didn't realize that they were into cars. So awesome. Thanks for the connection. Go ahead, Bruce. There's all kinds of questions that came in that I think we could probably address after Paul. So I don't know if he covers some, but we have about 150 questions in the chat from before we started the meeting. Most are probably not answers we have, but I have filtered through some. So I was thinking maybe at the end we could do a Q&A and kind of answer some of these together. Okay, well, I'll just answer one other thing and then turn it over to Paul. James, if you're looking for a really cool hemp jacket, touch base with Catherine Taylor Voss, who is on right now. I think I saw her. I think she's Catherine. Are you out there? And then I'll go get my jacket and I'll show it to you guys.
Cool. Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
The Bad Seeds Company out of
absolutely
Italy and Germany.
Out of Italy, all the way from Italy.
Yeah, there you are. Hey, Catherine.
Hey, hi, nice to see you.
Hi, Catherine. Welcome.
Thanks. Need to put my camera on. Yeah.
Real quick before we switch over, I'd love to hear you. Did I hear you right, Bruce, that you've got a clothing line, Catherine?
That's right. We actually do hemp denim 100%, and doing quite well with it. And we've actually increased we've got a flagship store here in Italy, and we've really seen an increase in sales, and our customers, they really demand transparencies. They're no longer happy with buying hemp that comes out of China and has traveled 3 times around the world.
Yes, good news. Anything we can do, I'd love to have you more involved or bring you back. For those that are new, again, I keep saying that today, but we have reoccurring meetings in all different topics. And so we have got, this is carbon sequestration or carbon and sustainability. We also have a textile meeting that meets every other Friday. I'll share the link for you, Catherine, so you can register. It's the following Friday. So not this week, but next week.
Much appreciated. I'm also in the textile group of the European Industrial Hemp Association.
Perfect. Well, I'd love to have you. We've got a few of the PhD students from North Carolina State that are coming to speak next Friday, and kind of talk about the state of the industry and progress and stuff that they've.
Perfect.
Catherine, did you notice you had a professional model in Bruce?
We did actually. We intentionally sent him one of our cool jackets, and you know what? There are a few of these jackets around in the world, and they're being worn with a lot of pride.
Very cool. Well, James, we'll have to get you one, and you can wear it on your interviews and put all your patches on it. That's awesome.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Catherine.
Awesome, Bruce.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Nice to connect with you as well. So, Paul, I'd love to turn it over to you and give a quick intro about who you are and what you're working on, how you got here.
Thank you, Mandi. I have been a cannabis scholar for 30 years. I was an environmental activist before that with Sea Shepherd in Hawaii. I was director for Sea Shepherd for a couple of years. But when I learned about hemp and all of the things that you could make from it, I recognized it as a fundamental issue. And I took it on 30 years ago as something that needed to change. And at the time, I was 35 years old and full of energy and idealism. And so the first thing I did was I planted cannabis publicly and demanded to be arrested for something that can't possibly be within the rightful jurisdiction of any court, because it's far too valuable to be within the rightful jurisdiction of any court. It's both unique and essential. And so 30 years ago, I started off by pointing that out. And now 30 years later, I'm essentially saying the same thing I was saying 30 years ago. I just have more reasons to back it up. I wrote a book and I made a film entitled Cannabis versus Climate Change. And I have presented cannabis versus climate change in different places in the world for the past seven years or so. Essentially, it all started when I read an article in the Guardian News in 2006 entitled "Fragrance of Pine Forests Helps to Slow Climate Change." That's April 13th, 2006 in the Guardian News. Well, as it turns out, the science was done in Sweden by the air pollution laboratory in Stockholm. Hans Christian Hansen is the scientist who reported that the terpenes from the cannabis plant, he pointed out that terpenes from the boreal forests go up into the atmosphere and reflect solar radiation away from the planet and serve as cloud condensation nuclei. And so because the terpenes, it sounds like somebody's got their microphone unmuted.
Here I'm talking to myself, just saying that's what I was looking for, to see if anybody does have their microphone on, put it on mute. I couldn't find anybody, but the sound's gone now. Okay. Bruce, is that you? I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, the terpenes from the boreal forests and the marine phytoplankton in the oceans ascend into the atmosphere and physically refract solar radiation, the UVB radiation, away from the surface of the planet. And the terpenes also serve as cloud condensation nuclei that form bright and persistent clouds. And the terpenes don't photodegrade in sunlight. They're actually rained from the sky and become part of the hydrologic cycle. And so when I read this in the Guardian News, they also reported that about half of the boreal forests had been cut or had died before they realized that the terpenes serve this very important function in protecting the earth from the UVB radiation from the sun. And about half of the marine phytoplankton have also died in my lifetime. And so it stands to reason that we have about half of the atmospheric aerosol terpenes that we had in the atmosphere even just 65 years ago. So when you look around at ways that we can replenish the atmosphere with terpenes, there's really only one crop that's capable of replenishing the atmosphere with terpenes in the time that we may have left to make a difference. Cannabis produces more terpenes in more countries at a greater rate than any other agricultural resource. And so even if we couldn't make one thing out of cannabis, if we couldn't use it for anything or eat the seeds or do anything else with it, we'd still have to grow it for its environmental services. Cannabis is the only crop that produces the volume of terpenes needed in the time that we may have left to make a difference. And what's really important to understand is that we need to replenish the terpenes at the same time that we're sequestering the carbon, because there is a modicum of dimming that is occurring right now as a result of the particulate in the atmosphere and the carbon in the atmosphere. So if we sequester the carbon before we replenish the terpenes, then the increasing UVB radiation will continue to increase. It's already gone up quite a bit just in my lifetime. Not only the intensity of the UVB, but also the frequency of occurrence, the number of times per year that the UVB is in the extreme ranges. So once you establish that cannabis is the only crop that produces sufficient volume of terpenes, it's easy to see that we're going to have to grow a lot of it. And that's really good. Growing a lot of cannabis not only is going to help to heal Earth's atmosphere, but it will also replenish the atmosphere with oxygen and help to remineralize depleted soils and to regenerate compacted soils and soils that have been contaminated either by chemicals or radioactivity. Cannabis is a phytoremediative crop. It's beneficial for the soil, for the air, for the water, and for the wildlife. So we're just lucky that we can make fuel out of it too, because we have to grow it anyway. And so if we grow enough cannabis to heal Earth's atmosphere, that means we're going to have a lot of material to work with to make biofuels, a lot, and paper and tree-free or biodegradable plastic and hempcrete and all of the durable goods that we can produce from the cannabis plant, in addition to the herbal therapeutics and the complete nutrition. So pointing out that cannabis is the only crop that produces complete nutrition and clean energy from the same harvest also sets it in a category by itself, because no other crop produces complete nutrition and clean energy from the same harvest. So all of those things add up to cannabis being both unique and essential for several reasons. And the regulations that are being used to suppress the industry are obsolete. The concerns with THC are antiquated and unjustified. And now that we know that we have an endocannabinoid system an endogenous cannabinoid system that functions better when THC and CBD and the other cannabinoids are involved, we can transcend the impacted prohibition of the world's most valuable agricultural resource and recognize that cannabis is in fact mankind's functional interface with the natural order. And we can produce cellulosic hydrogen from the stems at the same time that we're harvesting the seeds for protein and the flowers for herbal therapeutics and other uses. So there really is no reason not to initiate a massive global campaign of cannabis agriculture. The operative emergency preparedness protocol is known as essential civilian demand. We can demand our right to grow what we need in order to avoid extinction. And right now, if you're not growing cannabis for seed, then you are food insecure. And if you're not growing cannabis to produce energy, then you're also energy insecure. Because in the conditions that we are experiencing now and can expect to get worse in the future, there aren't many plants that will be able to adjust. And while planting trees is a good idea, there's no guarantee that those trees are going to be able to survive into the future that we've created and that we are currently trying to figure out how to avoid. And so if cannabis can help to heal Earth's atmosphere, then time becomes the limiting factor in the equation of survival. And we don't have as much time as we think we do, because there are feedback loops and time lags that preclude our awareness of where we are in the trajectory of social evolution that we were born into. And so time is the NFT of the 21st century. Time is the currency of the 21st century. Money has no value on a planet that's uninhabitable. And so what needs to happen right now is that all of human resources need to be directed to distributing hemp seed throughout the world to every farmer and home gardener that may be able to help themselves and help their communities to provide the best nutrition and the cleanest energy in the greatest abundance in the most countries around the world in the shortest span of time. And that's what my book and my film present. The book is entitled Cannabis versus Climate Change, and my film is entitled Cannabis versus Climate Change also. And the book is available on Amazon, and you can see my film on Vimeo. And I have other films on YouTube. And I have a blog for the California Cannabis Ministry, which is a ministry that I started when my son was born. And I have exercised essential civilian demand for cannabis for 30 years, because really, did we ever delegate responsibility for our own individual well-being to the government? I never did. I don't think anybody else would do that willingly. And if cannabis can help to feed your family, then who can tell you that you can't grow it? That's always been my position. I've been convicted as a tax protester defending that position, and have always stood up for the human right to grow what we need.
Sure.
I wrote the manifesto for the world's first cannabis college in Amsterdam in 1998, and have helped to affect global drug policy working with NCOD and Hemp to Climate and other international organizations that share the goals of global hemp. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You can check out my photographs and my films online. And I just really thank you for everything that you're doing. This is great to see this happening after all this time.
Thank you. Thanks for getting us here. For everybody that's been working so hard at it in the past and for so many years, thank you. I see so many great faces. Alan's on here. Michael, thank you very much for everything you've been doing. Jeremy, you've got lots going on. Kelly, I saw your hand was up. Do you have a question you want to ask real quick still, or did they answer it for you? You're welcome to ask a question.
Real quick question. I'm not exactly sure who is directed to, but in calculating the amount
Kelly
of carbon sequestered by any, you mentioned you had some calculations. Yes.
I can't. You're breaking up real bad, and I can't hear you. Is it breaking up for everybody else too? Is that just me?
Yeah, it's breaking up.
Okay. Yeah, your sound. I can't understand you very well because the sound.
I think I understood the question though, Mandy.
Oh, good. See, you speak robot. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
I got you.
That's what happens when you do this long enough.
Yes, Kelly, that's great.
Okay, sorry. Real quick, how much of the calculation includes the microbial associations in the soil? So, Bruce, you mentioned the total root biomass, but how do you factor in, other associations in the soil that aren't specifically that plant? Go ahead. Thank you.
I can answer that.
Okay.
The Rodale Institute estimates that organic soil sequesters about 3 tons of carbon per acre per growing season. That's from the Rodale people. That was the most credible figures I could find.
And does that account for like cultural practices too? I'm assuming that's a no-till or low tillage situation.
Honestly, I don't know. I would imagine that that's correct, that it's a no-till situation. But cannabis can be grown that way, and I think it should be grown that way. I call it slow till because the plant tills the soil throughout the growing season. And it also rehydrolyzes the soil because the roots retain moisture and create a microbiome for the microbiota in the soil. So I think it's important to factor in the moisture retention and as well as the carbon sequestration.
Hey, Paul, thanks for that for the Rodale. I'll check that out. I was not familiar that they said that it's 3 tons per acre, but I'll check that out. If you happen to have a citation on that, maybe you could shoot it over to me. Eric Osterman, I think you're still here. Any comment on this?
Can you hear us, Eric?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Actually, there's our agronomist actually is on the line, Christy Apple, and I think she can certainly chime in because Harlan is working on this as we speak in terms of looking at AMF and glomalin and how that associates with hemp. So I don't know, Christy, if you could take yourself off mute, you can certainly answer that better than I can.
And real quick, for those of you that are interested, we're interviewing Christy live tomorrow to dive into details. So welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. So in partnership with Heartland Materials, I'm working on a baseline documentation project because to throw out a per ton number like Rodale has, it is within the realm of certain cultural practices. So as Kelly mentioned earlier, Does that take into account cultural practices? The answer is, well, maybe. So it does give us some kind of like buffer zones to understand what that is. But also we have to be realistic and recognize that soil structures in different geographies have different compositions, have extremely unique soil biota makeups, right? So no different than how you are able to, each of us are processing terpenes within our body. So they have the specific function in the atmosphere, as we just learned a few moments ago, but they also have very different functions within the human body. Soil microbial activity in different soil situations are going to impact the carbon sequestration. And so understanding what your specific soil baselines are is going to be absolutely essential for you to understand how to factor that in. And the question is, when do we need to factor that in, and how does that relate to the documentation process for like something like carbon credits? And so this is one of the objectives of our project, is to understand the implications of how we're collecting that data as it relates to the validation of one of the designated carbon validators or carbon credit validation bodies that's involved in this process. And then also what happens to the soil structure and carbon sequestration potential over time with the addition of additional practices. So we're looking at that. There's lots of data that's been involved in lots of research projects that are kind of capturing little like slices of these things. And so what we're trying to do is collect some information on what does that baseline look like, change over time. So it's Rodale has given us some excellent framework to help understand the soil fraction or soil component of that sequestration number. But it's really difficult to say because the soil textures and the soil physical properties directly affect the soil biological and chemical properties there. So we have to take more of a scientific approach to that. And we can't just like pluck a number out of the sky for that. It behooves us to document this right now while we're launching the industry, instead of going back and disseminating that information later when we're trying to make sense of it all. So that's what I'm doing for the Heartland Materials Project.
Awesome.
That makes perfect sense.
James, I saw your hand up. Is that what that was? Go ahead, man.
I just wanted to make a statement based on what Paul said before. I feel like we have to kind of follow the money of how, because government is simply selfish and evil. And we have to know this and deal with it. We live in a plutocracy, and I hope to get the masses to embrace everything hemp, get everyone, the everyday people and everyday companies and everything to start using hemp. It's kind of based on how you said you were arrested, which I'm don't fully didn't really fully understand what you meant by that, but
I'll explain it later.
Yeah, but
we'll feel for you, Paul, being a leader in justice. But my son, he also studies Chomsky, and he understands plutocracy. And so here's the future, guys. and we know that you can try to have a civil argument, but government does what they want to do. And James knows this. He's experienced this. He's actually been working with government to change laws with the Minister of Transportation on how vehicles are registered. And we know it's about big business. And Bruce will tell you that story later. but I'm proud that James knows what he knows, and there's nothing wrong with hemp. Never has been. All of the arguments have always been red herrings. Nothing more than corporations wanting to maintain oil and maintain control. And James knows that. And fortunately, he's ready to fight. He's going to take up your torch, Paul.
Well, thank you.
Well,
go ahead, Paul.
Well, can I? Yeah, I just want to let you know that I started off as a freedom fighter, but fighters get wounded and sometimes they get killed. And so I've transformed into a healer. And I recommend that you follow the healing path, because really, what we need to heal is our disrespect of nature. And once we discover that there are accelerated federal protocols for transcending the laws that restrict our access, then we can put this movement into hyperdrive and get ourselves to where we need to be in the time that we may have left to make a difference. But the first thing is to recognize that reterpenating the atmosphere is the priority. The terpene credits and the oxygen credits are worth more at this point than the carbon credits. And that needs to be the focus of roundtable discussions about this industry, because those are the values that are going to help us to transcend the economic inertia that we were born into, and that funds the kleptocracy and the pharmocracy that we were born into. So I'm delighted to meet you, James, and to hear that my son, who is 14 years old, is going to have an ally in this, and that hopefully you guys can get together and compare notes. I'm sure he'd love to meet you.
Awesome. Well, we have tons of questions, and a lot of questions around how we measure the carbon sequestration. I don't know if, somebody, Christy, I know that you had spoken previously about tools and resources that were available, but that's definitely something that comes up often, is how do we measure this? What is it? What is available? Christy or Paul, or does anybody want to add to that? Bruce?
I'd be happy to.
Please.
If we go back to that one slide that I did, several of the components of the equation are pretty much lock solid, and some of them are kind of in flux because we don't know enough yet. So things like plant material being 45% carbon, that's not questioned. It's scientifically accepted. The fact that that the CO2 inside of a plant, where that came from, comes from the atmosphere. It doesn't get pulled up. The carbon doesn't get pulled up through the soil. It comes through photosynthesis. So it's very it's well understood how to calculate what is what they call a carbon dioxide equivalent. It's that 3.67 number. But I saw one of the questions here about the roots. Can we really assume that 20% is sequestered simply by leaving the roots in the soil? I'm not 100% certain on that. A couple of those things towards the end there, I mentioned, we really want to get more data to confirm those. So they're kind of placeholders right now. It's kind of a best guess. I mean, if the roots are left in the soil and they're deep roots, do you really get that full 20% of the value? I'm not certain yet, and that's what's going to be kind of interesting. Eric is on the drawdown team, and he's taking measurements at the beginning of a season, and then taking measurements at the end of the season, etc. Hopefully, we'll figure out how much soil material is contribute the SOM that's contributed by the roots, and how long it stays there, if it does decay somehow and is released to the atmosphere. But I think the assumption there again is no-till practices would be used if we're really trying to get serious about carbon. So all the several of these things like that, and also the total amount of hemp stalk yield per acre. Those numbers are somewhat in flux, and hopefully by the end of this growing season, we'll find some farmers who have really dialed in the right cultivar to grow and at what density, etc., and their yields will be higher than what first pass was. So again, my apologies ahead of time that that spreadsheet is potentially wrong in some areas, but it's kind of the first stab at trying to get something, and so that's why I welcome anybody that's got some additional input. And that's in fact what we're trying to do with Drawdown Hemp is, one team member will come up with a whole analysis on, say, hemp insulation or something like that, and try to use that as a baseline. And then it's going to be peer reviewed by the rest of the team, et cetera. So we're going to be asking questions, try to find multiple citations, et cetera, try to do it in a scientific form. So we're working through it, and that's part of the objective here of Drawdown Hemp.
Well, and I'll go back to, this is really my goal in creating this, right? The platform for Global Hemp Association is to help aggregate content and provide a platform for you to connect. So I really encourage you after this to please connect with people that are on the call, help bring the projects together. I will continue to host meetings and topics of discussion to highlight people that are doing it right, and really drive the conversation. But this really is a platform for you guys to continue to grow business. And so, please take advantage of that. Christy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in the same context in the trunk here that Bruce is explaining to us, a question that keeps coming up in the comments is related to the biodiversity. And one of the aspects of the project that we are working on, I referenced this the last time we had this call 2 weeks ago, is also collecting data on soil microbial respiration, utilizing patented testing process that is measuring soil respiration of several different types of aerobic bacteria, but also the some of the fungal bodies as well, to give us some kind of measurement associated with biological health. So is there an effect on a hemp crop that is also creating a carbon sequestration environment? Is there a positive, negative, or what effect on the soil microbial? So the question keeps coming up, and the answer is we're trying to quantify that. As Bruce mentioned, a lot of what is referenced in these conversations is somewhat anecdotal, and so we're trying to bring some semblance of data to those things, so we can start down the right path. And we wish we had all the answers, right? So I work with a group of soil regen experts that have developed these methodologies to do this. They're leading the industry in this space and trying to help, large scale farmers make changes over into soil regenerative properties. And so measuring how that happens and measuring what we're doing and capturing that data is how we're doing that. So I plucked some of that out and plugged that into this project with Heartland so that we can, understand what also is the effect on soil microbial diversity or not, right? So we're looking to get those answers. We're trekking down that path, but this information doesn't instantaneously happen. It takes time to generate this, and creating a baseline for this information. I know I've said this a couple times now, but you're going to hear me say that again and again. If we don't know what our baseline is for certain measures, there's really no way for us to properly know how to move forward, or to be able to say, there's one single SOP that applies to every single farm is ludicrous. So what we're doing by gathering this data in different geographies is going to help build out a series of SOPs that allows us to think through how to implement, cannabis in whatever capacity on your farm. And here's what we found in these cultivars, and here's what we found with these plant densities, to kind of help, the end user, the producer, make more informed decisions that can move the needle on carbon sequestration or whatever it is their particular goal might be. But it just takes time for us to document that stuff. So yes, cultural tillage practices affect that. Yes, any commercial fertilizer, or yes, any manures that we use in the system is all going to have an effect. So it's important for us to do this documentation. And I wish we had more answers for you today, but as Bruce and as everybody on this call is well aware, is we're heading in the right direction. It takes time for us to get that. So bear with us, okay?
I have a question for you, Christy, and I'm sure that the rest of you can kind of add in on this, but there are some pretty good sized farms on the call right now. What is the, some of the reservation I hear is this no-till practice. Is that something, there's a lot of, I guess I say you can't train an old dog new tricks, right? Or teach an old dog new tricks. How viable is it, or what is this reservation that we're seeing in converting to the no-till practice, and what does that look like for the success of the industry and the carbon sequestration?
So when we till the soil, or we break apart the aggregate, which is what holds that soil, an aggregate is basically multiple soil particles held together with biological life, organic material, and other things. So when we till the soil, what we're doing is we are destroying that bond or augmenting that bond in a way that releases carbon. And so our conventional tillage practices is contributing to an increase in release of carbon from soil movement. And so the thought process here is behind the no-till approach is the less tillage we're doing to the soil, the more carbon we can maintain. So we're not necessarily, capturing more carbon necessarily, but we are reducing the risk of it gassing off and back into the atmosphere and going somewhere. But that naturally helps or happens through the full life cycle of a crop. So, a corn plant captures CO2 out of the atmosphere, stores it in its biomass, as we've learned here, and then we harvest it. So there's a carbon release when we're processing that. There's also that carbon release when we're processing the soil, i.e. tillage, right? So the reservations kind of come into play, when you start doing the math on return on investment. A farm is a business. And so one of the challenges we have in, when you sit in the seat that I sit or wear the shoes that I do, I consider myself a soil warrior when it comes to this piece, right? And I'm sure there's many of you on this call that would identify with that as well. But it has to come down to not just the good story, right? It has to be able to be cost effective on the farm to implement practices like that. So in certain situations, it is more cost effective to use conventional tillage or to use these other practices to achieve the cropping yields that we're going for. But what we need to do is kind of take this more systems approach, right? If all I'm doing is ever putting a Band-Aid to fix this one problem, I may be hemorrhaging inside and not know it until I'm so sick that I can't recover from it, right? But I've been bandaging my wound, appropriately for a long period of time. In the same way, our tillage practices over time have been amassing an internal hemorrhage in the form of carbon release, destruction of our soil aggregation. We're losing aggregate by the day, and this is a well-established fact. But I also don't go around preaching that we need to completely convert to no-till. And there's different reasons for that. I believe crop rotation. I believe in interseeding. I believe in leveraging other living biomasses and cover crops to help us to achieve tillage that would reduce our need for iron, fuel, fossil fuel, and cockpit time, right? Our time is valuable as well, and there's a cost associated with that. So there's a lot of factors at play. And if we take this more systems approach and this more like, let's look at our foundation. If we don't lay the cornerstone correctly, the entire rest of that foundation is going to be off kilter a bit. We're going to be able to overcome those things because of modern technologies, but eventually at some point, we will need to right the ship. And I feel like we're kind of approaching that precipice right now. Being in this conversation and again, we're answering these questions, and it's phenomenal content and things to address. So I'm not here to change somebody's mind about their tillage practices, but I am here to partner with farms to help them challenge the system that they're using, help them to document a baseline, and help to transition them into practices that would lead to soil restoration and thereby more carbon sequestration, regardless of the biomass that we're growing. There's other crops that are tremendous, carbon sequestration tools that we can implement. It just takes some really commitment on the part of the agronomist. And unfortunately, there isn't a huge body of agronomists that are willing to dive into that. I'm glad to be a part of a group that I am that believes very heavily in this, and we're making big moves under the surface, but the tsunami wave is coming, right? The shore is approaching.
That's the truth. Well, thank you very, very much. There's tons of comments in here, Christy, thanking you for all of your knowledge and dropping so much information. James had a question too earlier. For those of you that have products, he's looking to help promote and really drive attention to the industry. So if you want to send James a message or drop in different products that you're working on, Carl, didn't mean to stop you or see you when I did, but I'd love to introduce you to James and his group as well. You're working on the batteries and
Nice.
he's got a lot of good stuff going on. Carl, I don't know if you'd like to just give yourself a real quick intro.
Sorry, one moment, please. We apologize to everyone. Carl, we're dying that we're walking out at this moment because we're really excited about what you just said. You're hurting us, Mandi. We could spend the next 3 days here. James has to go and do a live broadcast with the Carter group, so we've got to leave now. Much love and thank you to all of you.
Absolutely.
Carl,
we'll be in touch.
Please reach out to us, Carl.
We'll be in touch for sure. Thank you, James.
Great.
It was great to have you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Carl, I don't know if you'd like to do a real quick. Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much for joining, by the way.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a great group, but I love listening. So this is my second one now, and I'm probably going to be coming to these a little bit more often. So I've scheduled it into my planner. It's great.
Good.
So I guess, okay, a little bit of background then. Yeah, so I've been in the industry for, I guess, around 14 years now up in Canada. Although I'm not in Canada right now, I'm in Paraguay. So I've been working here to try and establish the industry here. And I've been traveling the world doing that sort of thing. So I'm basically a research scientist. Been working in this field, developing products from the plant for a long time now. And I guess, one of the things that I developed a while back, I kind of fell upon it because I was trying to do different type of hempcretes. And one day I combined lime with biochar and then discovered that it was conductive and, made a small battery with it and, got 1.03 volts from this material. And I went, oh, that's kind of interesting. Now there's almost no amps on it. It was like, just done in microamps. So it was very, very tiny, but it got me to thinking about that sort of thing. And, I said, oh, can we store energy in our hempcrete, for example, or into our walls and these sort of things? So that's what got me thinking about that. And then built a small brick and then just demonstrated that back in about 2017 and demonstrated that down in Australia and spoke about it and the battery architecture and these sort of things that were in it. And the biochar and the brick itself, it was a hempcrete brick. The binder itself, though, was not lime. In this case, it would have been a magnesium oxide. And the battery was in there. I created a 4.5 volt battery with about 4 or 5 amps and was plugging in basically, you can plug in tablets and phones and charge them up. And then I designed it that way so you could actually 4.5 volts so you can actually beat your phone, right? And then the idea with that was the reason with the brick, because I thought about it, I said, oh, it'd be great to store energy in your wall. But then I said, oh, but when the battery dies, what do you have to do? Change your whole wall? And so I kind of said, okay, that's why I kind of looked at bricks and said, okay, you can have these interchangeable type of bricks. You can just, one goes out. If you have your battery management system, and you have like 1,000 bricks on your wall and brick number 732 is out, you can just go over, take it out, replace it, put it back in. It's kind of like a breaker in a wall system. And the whole idea, though, really was just to get people thinking about the surface area of our buildings and surface areas all around us that, potentially we could use as a means of storing energy, because that's one of the biggest problems that we have in our electrical grid system. And this is where I'm thinking more grid storage than I am maybe cars or tablets and these other things when I am developing my batteries, matrices, whether it be electrolytes and other things. I'm kind of really just looking at more that surface area. So I'm not trying to jam up as much energy as I can into that brick because I have all that surface area that can compensate for that. So, just for example, if each brick was 5 volts, 5 amps, and you had 1,000 bricks on your wall, you just add these all up and how much energy can you store there? And that's really kind of the idea. I was kind of going after and get people to think about. And the concept, I coined the concept BIES, or Building Integrated Energy Storage. And that doesn't necessarily just have to be hemp, because I've also been working with other biomasses like sugarcane or other large biomass crops that can actually do that. And so I'm a big fan of biochar and really trying to promote it and these sort of things. And I think it is one of these things that can actually really, really help in the future. Is that and hemp especially is especially good because of how quickly it grows. You can grow it for dual use, and you're getting both food and fiber off of that. And that fiber can go to a whole bunch of different things. I created a mind map that actually showed that sort of thing a while back. It was actually published last year in August in Hemp Today. And it's just a very extensive mind map that kind of shows all these things that can come from that. And I'm also a very big proponent of dual use. Why? Because with the upcoming challenges that are coming, I'm never one for just growing a crop for fuel, for example. If I can grow a crop that does both food and fuel, I really like that. So because, we got 25,000 people every day dying of starvation on this planet, that could be compensated by growing hemp, as a dual use crop. You grow it for the food, all that grain, great protein. So we don't have to have a whole bunch of cows. And then that fiber that's there can go into making your food, your houses, can also clothe you, it can also make the fuel, you cellulosic ethanol can be created from that. And so there's a whole bunch of things. And that's why I love this plant. And I'm going to continue championing this plant wherever I go.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
There are a lot of other questions. We're already at an hour and a half almost. And so I want to be sure that we're respectful of everybody's time. Again, this does continue to keep coming up, these questions. The goal is that we start to put groups together to actually move projects along and bring data in and so forth. Also, real quick, you guys, on Thursday, Bill Richmond and Bill Ashton from the USDA are going to be on to share information about opportunities, what they're finding, how they can be a resource to us. So I just shared the link for the education series. It's at 2 p.m. Mountain Time. And Bill, who is with the VA, has been an awesome support of our association, providing different grants and really helping some of our members become funded. And he invited Bill Richmond, who is the head of the hemp division, I believe, at the USDA. And so I'm really excited to have you. I invite all of you to come back. Please share it from there. So anyways, there are other questions. I don't know if you guys have questions specifically that you'd like to ask. Bobby, I saw your camera's on. I don't know if you have anything you want to add or ask. If anybody has questions, you're welcome to raise your hand. John, go ahead. I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Mandi. This is for Bruce. Bruce, John Carpenter from Bass Lab. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your work. It's interesting. I read Carbon Drawdown. And I was thinking, is anybody going to take the baton and run with hemp? And you're running with it. So fantastic. Question for you. You mentioned that the majority of the carbon that's sequestered is done in objects that are durable goods, call them, or long-lasting goods. Have you looked at textiles use that enter into a circular stream that have a longer last than just into the dump after one cycle? And are you considering that in your study as well as durable or hard goods? Thank you.
You're signed up, by the way, John. I already added you. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, thank you for that question, John. It's a great question. As we go through this, certainly textiles is definitely on the list. I read somewhere that 6.7% of all man-made greenhouse gases come from the textile industry. Just a huge number. I mean, it's almost as big as cement or steel. So, but it's kind of a semi category, right? I know firsthand from half of my wardrobe that's hemp, that's the half of the wardrobe I like the best because it holds up a lot longer. It's just really good stuff. So it might cost a little bit more, but it's going to last a lot longer, and it just holds up. But at the end of the day, when it all has to be calculated, you have to throw in factors like, especially when competing for the X Prize, because they specifically want to focus on stuff that can measures that can be used that sequester carbon for at least 100 years. Well, in reality, all this, a lot of the solutions that are going to be presented may not be 100 years, so your clothing may last for 10 years or 20 years, who knows? So we're going to apply a factor to that somehow. You get a whole 100% if it's over 100 years. You might get 10 or 20% if it's 10 or 20 years. And that's going to apply to other things too, like car bodies, right? Make a biocomposite car body like I do. That's not going to last for 100 years. Somebody's going to do it. And then the recyclability of that textile, of those textiles, and the recyclability of a car body that's made out of thermoplastic resins rather than thermoset resins, so it can be recycled, etc. And what's cool is that there's so many folks that are looking at these things now that weren't looking at it 10 years ago. So there's a lot of innovation going on, and yeah, I believe we will try to figure out a way to factor in the recyclability and the true sequestration timeframes, because not everything's going to be sequestering CO2 for thousands of years. Some things will, some things won't.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I think this is, we've talked a lot about building teams. Part of what Bruce has done is built these teams around these different sectors or verticals within the industry. So if you do have interest in getting involved in one piece, please do so. I think there's just one more project that we collectively can work on together to move the voice. And Bruce, I don't remember if you spoke about it, but what's the intention with this prize money? What's the goal then, so people understand? Besides, I get it. I mean, after I take my share.
Yeah,
right?
We're still discussing that amongst the team. For right now, on our website, it basically says that if we do win some of these award monies, I guess the first prize is $50 million, so that's nothing to sneeze at. But second and third would be less. And then Elon Musk has said that he, if he sees some sort of a solution out there that just doesn't quite fit the bill right, but it just intrigues him, he's going to, cough up some more money, potentially. So what would we do with this money? We basically agreed as a team right now, for the time being, that the statement that it would go towards furthering innovations of hemp products. And we haven't gotten any more details on that yet, but we will further define that in time. But as you can imagine, if we find that one hemp solution is 1,000 times more powerful than another hemp solution, and it really requires a little oomph in terms of investment, I think we'll eventually have a committee internally that will look at these sorts of things. And then we're also going to probably rely a lot on the input from the X Prize team and Mr. Musk if we get some of this money, and ask for his advice there too. But that's why we're going to be set up as a not-for-profit, and ultimately we want that money to go towards the innovation and drive the whole industry forward.
Absolutely. With that being said, I want to give a shout out to our new members. We had 21 members join Global Hemp Association this month. So thank you guys, because we wouldn't be able to do this and make the progress that we would without you. So thank you very, very much. I'm excited. It's fun every Monday writing a newsletter, and there's 5 or 6 new members that are coming in. So it makes me very happy. It means we're doing something that's working and we're making progress. Again, nothing makes me more excited than besides that 50 million in my bank account, but then knowing that you guys are connecting, once we get off here. I love hearing from you guys that you're making connections or working together and have met here on our association or through the platform. So continue to do that. Thank you very much. I just wanted to give you a shout out with our progress. I think we're up to 130 members now, which for 6 months, it's pretty good. And thank you, Michelle. I know Michelle was on the call. She's probably at work, but I definitely need to give a shout out. She is helping with customer relations and memberships. And so if you hear from her or have any questions, equally as much, don't hesitate to reach out to her. Hers is Michelle at globalhempassociation.org, or mine, Mandi, at globalhempassociation.org. And Paul, I saw your mic come on one last time. If we want to close things up or kind of wrap things up, I'd love to turn the mic over to both you and Bruce and then say goodbye for the afternoon.
Thank you, Mandi. There were a couple of things I just wanted to mention. I wanted people to keep in mind that carbon sequestration is important, but replenishment of the atmosphere with terpenes is the priority. That when we determine the volume of cannabis that's needed to replenish the atmosphere with terpenes, that will determine the amount of biomass we have to work with. So the baselines are changing too. I mean, the UVB radiation is a major fundamental shift in a baseline that we just don't have any way of anticipating. So a lot of the data that people are wanting to collect, we just don't have time for it. The one thing that we do know is that time is the limiting factor in the equation of survival. And so if hemp is the only crop that produces the volume of terpenes, then that becomes the objective. And it becomes exclusive of any other data or considerations. Because if we don't fix the atmosphere, then nothing that anybody else is doing will matter at all very soon. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I am raising funding for a cellulosic hydrogen biodigester to make clean energy and complete nutrition from the same harvest in Southern Oregon, because the stem material from the marijuana industry, the recreational cannabis industry, and the stem material from the CBD industry, all that stem material is currently producing greenhouse gases unless it's being turned into something else, which most of it isn't. So those are just the things I wanted to mention. And thank you, Mandi, for everything that you do. Thank you, Bruce, for everything that you're doing. And I look forward to connecting with you again later on.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you very, very much. And thanks for everybody else that's on the call. There's a lot of you that didn't speak that I want to call on, and I know that I can't because you're probably busy doing something. Like Sean, I see him. I see you. Anyways, Bruce, go ahead.
Robert, did you have a question I saw there, Bobby?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you guys for coming to the event. I guess I'll wrap up just by saying that the drawdown hemp operation, if you want to call it that, is open for folks that might want to participate on it. I don't know that it's necessarily an organization that we want to be thousands of people in it per se, but we want to have those that are interested in certain aspects about how hemp can help the planet. And so with that interest, we would kind of expect you to kind of to do some research and to work with others on the team, have your research vetted, etc. So it's not just a party, but we want, maybe it will be a party. Maybe we'll win the $50 million. You never know. So, but even if we don't, we will be moving the industry forward. We will be building a much greater understanding about hemp, how hemp can help save the planet. There's a lot of folks that quote Jack Herer, who wrote the book The Emperor Wears No Clothes back in 1985, and one of the things that Jack supposedly said, although it's not in the book, and I know it's not in the book because I'm the most recent editor of the book. It said, "I don't know if hemp is going to save the world, but it's the only thing that can." I would have loved to have met that guy. I don't know if Paul. I would suspect that Paul had met him since he
Jack was a friend.
I had guessed that, but net he didn't quantify. It was too early. There weren't the numbers. Nobody could grow it then. And now, if he were still alive today, I think he would be going like, yeah, let's quantify this thing. Let's prove it. Let's show just exactly what it can do. So that's going to take a community in order to do that. And so I invite any of you that want to become involved in it, come on board. Let's make it happen, and give me a shout.
Awesome. Thank you. Anybody else real quick before we log off? Go ahead, Bobby. Are you saying
I just want to say that, you know, what Bruce was addressing, that really this group has the opportunity to become the most available set of data for the industry anywhere in the world. I mean, organizations that have some of it won't share it with you. And this will be an incredible opportunity for all of us to really do make that difference that Bruce talks about. We can save the world.
We are. Let's put it out there. We are, right? And collectively we can. And I'm going to just echo what Bobby said. The power of collaboration is, it's been humbling for me to watch, and the success that we've made in such a short time with people coming together by collaborating. And so, like Bruce said, we welcome anybody to participate and join. We really want to create this open source platform where you know who's who in the industry, what they're doing, what production is, so that we can then decide or build a supply chain that's sustainable and competitive. And so, yes, thank you for all of you that are participating. I'm excited to have you here. I still want to call on names, but I won't. And Tony, I saw your hand is up. If you have something else you want to add real quick before we sign off. Thanks, Bobby, by the way.
Oh,
Tony,
just
you're good.
Hey, yeah, thanks for letting me speak. I just wanted to say we're starting a 2-year research project in Central California with looking at the effects of biochar on no-till industrial hemp cropping systems, specifically fiber hemp in rotation cool season cover crops. I'm really interested in the prospects of technology of biochar production through pyrolysis with hemp as a way for carbon drawdown. So if there's any way that we can collaborate, or if there's anyone on this call that could be interested in collaborating on this project, it's going to be a 2-year study. We're going to be doing, soil and leaf tissue analysis 3 to 4 times a year, or three leaf tissue analysis on 3 times on each crop, and soil analysis like 3 times each year after each cover crop and each hemp crop. Just wanted to throw that out there, see if there's anyone who's working on carbon sequestration through biochar with hemp as a feedstock, or also looking at these pathways for research. But thank you.
Okay, I was just now trying to find the date, Bruce, and I don't know if I have it on my calendar or I couldn't find it right away, but we have a discussion coming up focused on biochar. Literally every topic that has come up, I have on our calendar over the next year. What I've done, just so you guys know, is when you guys sign in and collect, I've started to collect questions from everywhere. So I've been able to focus now our groups on frequently asked questions, and biochar is one that has come up. So Tony, I'll make sure that you get involved. And if you want to make sure your contact information is in the chat so people can reach out to you personally. And then for each of you that are on the call, I will send a link to the transcribed notes and the video so you have it as well today. It takes a few days for my team to finish it or build it out, transcribe it. It's not computer. I have an awesome team behind me that actually just takes all of the notes for us. So if there's misspelled words, let me know. Other than that, you guys, thank you very, very much for joining. I appreciate you. Anything else that anybody would like to add, please feel free to chime in. Thank you, Sean, very much. Mike, Drew, Carl, Paul, Jeremy.
I just wanted to throw out there, hi, this is Milan. I work with Tony at the World Cannabis Foundation. We're hosting an event on the 31st of this month. I don't know if it got mentioned earlier. I came to the call late, but I posted the link to it. It's an event high. It's a hemp field day. We're going to be touring the research plots that Tony and Larry Serbin planted up there in Lemoore. And then we're going to be going over to the new Riverdale hemp factory, which is Western Fibers, the cotton gin that is being converted to hemp gin. So that's the 31st of this month. We'd love to have all of you there.
Awesome. Thank you. If you'll send me details, I'll get you my email address. I do have the link right here, but we can share things like this in our newsletter that we send out. So for those of you that do have, as members, and that you do have events that are coming up that we can help support, I will happily add those to our weekly newsletter that we send every Monday.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Mandi. You're doing amazing work. I'm so thrilled to be here and be part of this.
Thank you. Thank you, you guys. Today was a great meeting. Thank you for staying on. We still have 40 people. We've been on now for an hour, just over an hour and a half. Other than that, farewell. Thank you, guys. Thank you,
Mandi.
See you next time.
Thanks, Mandi. See you.